Welcome to BeFM Drama, where we turn great literature into gripping radio. I'm your host, Joshua Cornwell, and today we're bringing you the final episode in our 5-part adaptation of The Resident Patient, a classic Sherlock Holmes mystery from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This strange tale finds Holmes and Watson investigating on behalf of a young doctor named Percy Treveyan, a successful young man who is able to start his business thanks to the generosity of a mysterious gentleman named Mr. Blessington, who offered to front the cost of renting a practice in exchange for 3/4 of the profits and constant access to Trevelyan's medical services as a live-in resident patient, a fairly common arrangement at the time when a doctor's medical practice often doubled as their home. All was well until Blessington stumbled across an article that terrified him. Shortly thereafter, 2 strange men posing as Russian noblemen sought Dr. Trevelyan's medical advice and managed to trick him into leaving the room while one of them went upstairs into Blessington's bedroom. When Blessington discovered this intrusion, he fell into an even deeper panic, and Trevelyan sought the assistance of Sherlock Holmes. The great detective traveled to Trevelyan's practice, but Blessington refused to answer his questions. It is now the next day, and Holmes and Watson have been suddenly called back to Trevelyan's Brook Street practice by terrible news. Blessington has been found dead by hanging in a presumed suicide. One look at the scene, however, and Holmes has declared the case a murder. As we return to the story in our final episode, Sherlock Holmes explains his reasoning to a stunned audience. Holmes went over to the door of the bedroom and, turning the lock, he examined it in his methodical way. Then he took out the key, which was on the inside, and inspected that as well. The bed, the carpet, the chairs, the mantelpiece, the dead body, and the rope were each in turn examined, until at last he professed himself satisfied, and with my aid and that of the inspector, cut down the wretched object and laid it reverently under a sheet.
How about this rope?
Dr. Trevelyan drew a large coil of rope out from under the bed.
It was cut off this. Blessington was morbidly nervous of fire and always kept this beside him so that he could escape through the window in case the stairs were burning.
That must have saved them trouble. Yes, the actual facts are quite plain, and I shall be surprised if by the afternoon I cannot give you the reasons for them as well. I will take this photograph of Blessington, which I see upon the mantelpiece, as it may help me in my inquiries.
But you have told us nothing.
Oh, there can be no doubt as to the sequence of events. There were 3 of them in it, the young man, the old man, and the third, whose identity I have no clue. The first 2, I need hardly remark, are the same who masqueraded as the Russian count and his son, so we can give a very full description of them. They're admitted by an accomplice inside the house. If I might offer you a word of advice, Inspector, it would be to arrest the servant boy, who, as I understand, has only recently come into your service, Doctor.
The young imp cannot be found. The maid and the cook have just been searching for him.
He has played a not unimportant part in this drama, the 3 men having ascended the stairs, which they did on tiptoe, the elder man first, the younger man second, and the unknown man in the rear.
My dear Holmes.
Oh, there can be no questioning as to the superimposing of the footprints. I had the advantage of learning who was who last night. They ascended to Mr. Blessington's room, the door of which they found to be locked. With the help of a wire, however, they forced open the lock. Even without the lens, you will see by the scratches on this lock face where the pressure was applied. On entering the room, their first order of business must have been to gag Mr. Blessington. He may have been asleep, or he may have been paralyzed with terror as to have been unable to cry out. These walls are thick, and it is conceivable that his shriek, if he had time to utter one, went unheard. Having secured him, it is clear to me that a consultation of some sort was held. Probably it was something not unlike a judicial proceeding, must have gone on for some time, as numerous cigars were smoked before they had concluded. The older man sat in that wicker chair. It was he who used the cigar-holder. The younger man sat over yonder. He knocked his ash out against the chest of drawers. The third fellow paced up and down. Blessington, I think, sat upright on the bed, but I cannot be absolutely certain of that.
And how do you believe these killers ended their little courtroom charade, Mr. Holmes?
Well, Inspector Lanner, it ended by their taking Blessington and hanging him. The matter was so carefully prearranged that it is my belief that they brought with them some sort of block or pulley which might serve as gallows. That screwdriver and those screws were, as I can see, for setting it up. Seeing the hook, however, they naturally saved themselves the trouble. Having finished their work, they ran off, and the door was barred behind them by their confederate.
We had all listened with the deepest interest to this sketch of the night's doings, which Holmes had deduced from signs so subtle and minute that, even when he had pointed them out to us, we could scarcely follow him in his reasoning. The inspector hurried away to make inquiries about the missing servant boy, while Holmes and I returned to Baker Street for breakfast. Holmes ate quickly and then stood up abruptly to leave again.
I'll be back by 3 this afternoon. Both the inspector and the doctor will meet me here at that hour, and I hope by then to have cleared up any remaining obscurity this case may still present.
Our visitors arrived at the appointed time, but it was 3:15 before my friend Sherlock Holmes put in his appearance. From his expression as he entered, however, I could see that all had gone well with him.
Any news, Inspector?
We have got the boy, sir.
Excellent, and I've got the men.
You have got them.
Well, at least I've got their identity. This so-called Blessington is, as I expected, well known at Scotland Yard headquarters, and so are his assailants. The names are Biddle, Hayward, and Moffat.
My God, the Worthington Bank Gang.
Precisely.
Then Blessington must have been Sutton.
Exactly.
Why, that makes it all crystal clear then, doesn't it?
Dr. Trevelyan and I looked at each other in mutual bewilderment. Holmes caught sight of my expression and turned to face us.
You must surely remember the great Worthington bank robbery. 5 men were in it, these 4 and a 5th called Cartwright. Tobin, the caretaker, was murdered, and the thieves got away with £7,000. This was in 1875. All 5 of them were arrested, but the evidence against them was by no means conclusive. This man we knew as Blessington, whose true name was Sutton, was the worst member of the gang, but he turned informer to save his own skin. On the evidence he provided to the authorities, Cartwright was hanged, and the other 3 got 15 years each. When they were released several weeks ago, some years before their full term, mind you, they immediately set themselves, as you can see, to hunt down the traitor Sutton and to avenge the death of their comrade upon him. Twice they tried to get him and failed. The 3rd time, you see, they pulled it off. Is there anything further I can explain to you, Dr. Trevelyan?
The young doctor had gone pale, no doubt reflecting on the fact that this band of hardened killers had entered his home and cold-heartedly murdered his resident patient in the dead of night, while all the while he had slept peacefully in his own rooms downstairs.
No, I think you have made it all remarkably clear. No doubt the day on which he became so upset was the day when he had read of the gang's release in the newspapers.
Quite so. His fears about a burglary were merely a convenient explanation for his sudden terror.
But why could he not tell me this? Or you, for that matter? After all, he turned state's evidence and was an innocent man in the eyes of the law.
Well, my dear sir, knowing the vindictive character of his old associates, he was trying to hide his own identity from everybody for as long as he could. His secret was a shameful one, and he could not bring himself to divulge it. Wretch as he was, as you say, still living under the protection of British law, and I have no doubt, Inspector, that you will make sure that, while that shield may have failed to guard, the sword of justice is still there to avenge.
Such were the singular circumstances in connection with the resident patient and the Brook Street doctor, Trevelyan. From that night on, nothing has been seen or heard of the 3 murderers by the police, though it is guessed by Scotland Yard that they were among the passengers of the ill-fated steamer Nora Crane, which was lost some years ago with all hands off the Portuguese coast, some leagues to the north of Oporto, en route to Australia. The court proceedings against the servant boy broke down for lack of evidence, and the Brook Street mystery, as it was called in the newspapers, has never been fully dealt with in any public record until now. And so the mystery finally becomes clear. Mr. Blessington was in fact a reformed bank robber a man who had become an informant to the police and provided information that saw the rest of his gang arrested, imprisoned, and executed. In exchange for his cooperation, the man now known as Mr. Blessington was spared prosecution and offered protection by the government. With the revelation of Blessington's past history, the circumstances surrounding his death become clear. The article that so terrified him in the newspaper was news of his former associate's early release from prison. The mysterious Russians were disguised members of the gang, scoping out the building before making their move, and Blessington's hanging was the result of a kind of trial that the gang arranged for him, sentencing him to death for his betrayal. It's an ugly business, and the killers would have gotten away with it completely if not for the unlucky fact that they became passengers on the Nora Crane, a passenger steamer that sank off Portugal at the start of its long journey to Australia. We hope that you've enjoyed our presentation of The Resident Patient here on BeFM Drama. I'm your host, Joshua Cornwell, and I voiced Dr. Watson, the narrator. Ryan Estrada was Sherlock Holmes, and David Kim was Dr. Percy Trevelyan and Inspector Ladder.